Good afternoon, and thank you for joining KitchenAid, Food and Wine, and the incomparable Andrew Zimmern for the first ever Food and Wine Classic in Aspen Make-Along. This is an opportunity to not just watch, but make, and not just make, but make dumplings. Throughout his worldwide travels, Andrew has learned a thing or two about these little bundles of joy, and he's here to share the very rewarding process of making them yourselves. Andrew has his own process, but that's just a starting point for making dumplings your way using ingredients you choose. As everyone at home knows, we're broadcasting this make-along on Facebook Live. So welcome to everyone who's tuning in today. And to everyone here in person, just as you had a chance to win a golden ticket to this special event, one lucky Facebook Live viewer and guest will have a chance to win their own make-along with Andrew in his Minneapolis studio kitchen, courtesy of our sponsor, KitchenAid. The winner will be chosen at random from among those who answer prompted questions and use the hashtag KitchenAidSweepstakes during this Facebook Live broadcast. For full rules and information, click the link in the video post on Facebook. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, KitchenAid. Enjoy.
Thank you, KitchenAid. Thank you to everyone at Food and Wine. This could not be more fun. People who do what I do for a living have a huge ego and absolutely no self-esteem at all. So we're desperately in search for a larger and larger audience. So thankfully, thanks to everybody at Facebook, we have one. I also get to talk about probably my favorite food in the whole world, which are dumplings. If I had to pick, my top 5 desert island foods, I think dumplings are a universe that I would be very happy eating for the rest of my life because they can be wrapped in anything, they can be stuffed with anything, and I'm hard-pressed to find a culture that doesn't have a version of one as part of its, culinary milieu, right? I mean, pierogies in Eastern Europe, dumplings in China, right? There's the arepa of Colombia and the whole horn of Southern Africa, where they're famously made, is essentially one big giant dumpling. There are unstuffed dumplings, right? Think of German knödels or matzo balls that my grandmother made. And then there's the whole world of stuffed dumplings. And when I thought about doing this, it's like there's so many different ways to teach dumpling making. I think let's start with a classic, but let's always remember that you can open this up into your kitchen and stuff these little darlings with leftover pot roast and gravy, which I've done at my house. You can stuff them with leftover sauerkraut and smoked pork chops from your choucroute that you make on Alsatian night in your house, which is Wednesday in my house. Please stop by. I'm happy to cook for you. But the idea that we are just learning about dumplings is too limiting. We're learning about a series of culinary techniques that wind up becoming dumplings, right? They wind up becoming dumplings. When it's on your plate, right, it's a classic Shanghai-style boiled dumpling. As you're moving along, it starts out as just flour and water. I mean, if you start there, it could become pasta, it could become pie dough, it could become a lot of things, right? The force meat, either pork or vegetarian, could be sausage, right? So you have lots of components to play with. And I want you to think about that as you're making these, because you could fold these in the style of tortellini and do an Italian riff with this flavored force meat going into these tiny little pockets. Lots of ways to do it. Once you have the versatility of the equipment that meets the ingredient, that becomes the technique, that then becomes the food, right? So try to think of it bigger. And I like to call that culinary literacy, okay? If you are not into food, then you don't need to worry about it. But all you people are into food, and all you people watching are into food. I know it, right? So if you want to be, and I detest the word foodie, I don't use it. I prefer gastronaut. So if you, or food geek, right? And if you're my age, you can call yourself a gourmand, whatever you would like. But if you want to be, if you truly want to be someone who has a rich and fulfilled food life, that means you need to know how to make those 3 or 4 dishes from every culinary genre, every food culture in the world, right? If you want to be literate in the well-read sense, you need to have read Dickens, you need to read Somerset Maugham, you need to have read the Oxford collection of short stories that we all read when we were in grade school, right? And then you are literate in a literary sense, right? I want the world to be literate in a culinary sense, because the more that we cook together, as we're doing right now, and learn together and have a shared experience, we're able to cook more with our friends and family and export that out into our lives. And the shared experience is important because the world is not made up of blenders and pots and pans and bowls of ground pork. The world is made up of people. That's the most important thing in it. And we're put on this planet to relate to each other. And I think the best way to relate to each other is with food. Sound good? All right. So, fun and games are over. Let's get serious. First thing we have to do is make our dough. I often do this with a pair of chopsticks in a bowl. But this handy dandy paddle attachment for dough is just as good. I always want to have a scraper, some equipment on hand to be able to work the dough. I like to work with my hands. If you're working with flour, make sure you don't rinse with hot water. That activates the proteins and makes them sticky, especially for people who have rings or jewelry or bracelets. Cold water, so always remember that. Most important thing before you start cooking with this is to actually test that it's locked and that it's on. There, it's locked. Put it on 1, it's on. This is nice and stable. I do that at 1 because safety first. If this is unstable or this little baby isn't on the right way and you just crank it up to 11, right, and you have your hand in here, you could hurt yourself. So I always test my machine, most important thing. Next thing I want to do, get some cold water. And I'm just going to slowly add my cold water until I reach dough consistency. The recipes that you have in front of you and that are on the website are going to work absolutely perfectly for you. I don't want to turn this into a glutinous mess. Once I see it start to gather away from the sides like this, I know that it's done. Now, the reason I didn't measure is because I can do this by feel because I've done it so many times. But we're also at altitude, and doughs and things boiling tend to change at altitude because the flour here is so much drier than it is back at my home in Minneapolis right now, right? I almost have to use about 1/3 again as much water. So don't be afraid of that, kind of like grandma. And by the way, I'm using my paddle to agitate the bottom just to pick up those little bits that are down there that don't get picked up while it's in the machine. Flour my work surface. Put my dough here. Thank you, Bridget. And I'm going to start working it. Now, you always learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. So sadly, this worked out perfectly the first time. Sorry about that. I've made this a lot. But when you have those sort of shreddy pieces that look like perfect pie dough, you know that by kneading it, more of the water molecules are going to get into the flour. And the more that you knead the dough and let it rest, and then knead the dough and let it rest, the softer the dough is going to be, the better the mouthfeel is going to be. So I could make dumplings with this right now, and they'd be good. But if I just keep kneading this a little more, they'll be really, really, really good, right? So I have to move on to other things. So I have some very special guests today who are helping me in the kitchen. Thank you very much.
We're going to pass that for them.
Wonderful. Hannah, you want to come on up here? Here's the deal. Have you ever worked dough like this before?
Yes.
Okay. Have you seen Godfather 3?
No.
Okay. Come on over here.
Okay.
And what I want you to do is just grip it like this and roll it forward. and then turn it, grip it, roll it forward. And you just turn it and roll it forward. There's really no wrong way to do it. It's just if you turn it like this and just keep going like that, it's gonna get soft and soft and soft. And maybe do that like 50 times, which sounds like a lot now, but it's actually not a lot.
Okay.
There, you've done it twice.
Yeah.
3. You're almost 10. You are now 10% done. Good. So it's super, super, super fast. Now, I have some dough here that we've already made. Thank you. And the most important thing when you go and you look at the recipe, this actually gets kneaded and rested twice. So you end up with a really, really soft dough when it's boiled. Now, I have already sheeted these pieces through the KitchenAid pasta roller, which is just a great attachment. I ground the force meat with the grinding attachment. But once I've rested this, right? No, you can stop. It's the magic of television.
Exactly.
All right, so let's put that aside.
Here.
No, like a side would be over there.
Got it.
Take the knife, cut this into quarters, and roll those quarters into logs, right? Just like this one right here. Bridget, will you throw that on that side? Thank you. So the next thing that I want to do is get my pasta roller attached and locked. And you remember we talked before about making sure the equipment is right? There's a small little hole there that this little metal plug fits into, and inside there's a square-shaped hole for the square-shaped socket, and I have a screw that's right here that I make sure is attached as well. And 1 is the largest size on this. So you've all watched Mario Batali make pasta, right? So you gradually make it thinner and thinner and thinner. Eventually we're gonna end up on 4 on this, but I turn my machine on and just make sure that it's actually working. You don't need to go that fast on this. I have mine on 2 or 3. But if I take, we'll save this to do by hand, a piece of this dough and put it through the machine, out comes this beautiful strip. I want to flour that. I want to flour my rollers. I want to flour this. You can go ahead and sit down. That was a magnificent job. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn this. I have too much flour on my hands. To 2. You just pull the little knob out and out it comes. And I'm going to start with my fat end of the dough. No jokes out there. And I'm going to put this through a couple of times. Now, at this point, it's making it nice and long. I've gone to 3, to 4, and when I'm at 4, I'm just about the perfect thickness for making a really stunning light dumpling. Now, what thickness makes for a light dumpling? Well, it depends on how you're going to cut it and how you're going to cook it, right? So I can take a pastry cutter, cut a round circle out of my dough, right? And I have a perfect little, I don't know what, 2 inches wide, and make a nice petite little dumpling. These are gorgeous. This one's done on 4. These are on 3. They're slightly thicker. If you're going to be doing a pot sticker, you may want to do it on 2, right? I'll show you how to do that in a little while as well. Or you can take your dough and cut them in little 1-inch pieces and do it Chinese grandma style with a dowel, which allows you, if you want to get really, really fancy, to make the bottom of the dumpling skin a little thicker than the top, right? So that when you fold it over, it's evenly sized. That's like dumpling 303. We're doing dumpling 101. Don't worry about that part. But all I do is paddle the end of my roller around until I get the size and the shape that I want. And the thing that I like about using the roller is that I can make this however shape that I want, and by twisting away from it, I can come up, what's the first one I should make? I'll put the pork force meat in there. Now, I should tell you, regardless of how you're making a dumpling, regardless of whether it's a pierogi, a shenjiao bao, anything in between, the only mistake you can make when making a dumpling is what? Overfilling it. Don't overfill it. You don't want a burster, right? You can always cut away a little extra dough, pinch away a little extra dough. The other thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're sealing it properly. And I'll come out there and take a look at this with you. But the nice part about, I'm going to trim off some of my extra here. The nice part about this is that there's no wrong way to do it. I like to do usually 5 or 6 pleats across the top of my dumpling so that I have a little rooster comb at the top of it, right? So all I'm doing, and I'll do one smaller one here for you. With my dumplings, right? I join it at the top. If you can't do this as your first step, you've got too much filling, right? Then I seal across the edges. You can use water to help you. So now I have a half moon that's not sealed all the way. I can see gaps. I can see the pork through it, right? I just have a simple half moon. And I'm going to take my 2 hands and pinching the dough, I'm going to go 1 pinch, 2 pinch, 3 pinch, 4 pinch, 5 pinch. Where'd my dumpling go? Okay, you ready? I fold one end over the other and pinch. 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 And I do it at the end. Right? And when I'm pinching, I know it's nice and soft. Right? Janelle, you want to give this a try? All right. So I have some beautiful circles here for you.
Yes, you do.
And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this just a touch bigger so it's a little easier for you. You can go vegetarian or you can go pork,
Okay.
whatever you would like to do. You know what? I'm going to do a couple more
I always overstuff.
with you. Everyone is an overstuffer.
I know, why is that?
Now, I should tell you, I just saw you do something a lot of other people do. You now have one that's almost guaranteed to burst. Hold yours out. No, this is the mistake. Everyone does this. You use the end of your spoon to smear it on the dumpling. So that little bit of pork fat right there is going to be very hard to seal.
Oh boy.
I actually give that a 50-50 shot. We're going to try cooking with it. What you want to do is you just want to use your thumb and put that dollop of pork right in the middle.
Okay.
There, right?
Dolloping, not smearing.
That's all you got to do. And then seal as best you can. And then 1, 2, this one's a little dry. 3, I only got 4 folds in, but that's fine.
Yeah, this is the small.
Do you want to know something? For a first dumpling, that's beautiful. Look at that.
Not bad.
You got 5. You got 5 folds. Let me tell you something. At the end of the day, guys, you know how you go to those fancy restaurants and the dumplings are perfect, right? And Din Tai Fung has 21 pleats on every xiaolong bao dumpling, right? You do not have to be a dumpling maker at Din Tai Fung. That's not why you're here. You're here to learn how to do it. The great thing about dumplings is regardless of what they're shaped like, they're all gonna turn out, right?
Just don't want to overstuff.
You just don't want to overstuff. So, I've got my boiling water here. I'm going to increase the heat because I'm going to drop these in.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm back with 2 questions for our Facebook Live audience. So here, as a reminder, answer these or any other prompted questions. This or any other prompted question we'll be asking you throughout the broadcast, and use the hashtag KitchenAid Sweepstakes to enter for a chance to win a private make-along with Andrew in his Minneapolis studio kitchen. So the first question we have for the Facebook Live audience is, what is your favorite dough-based recipe to make at home?
Perfect. Was that question for me? Fantastic. All right, so this dough that we've made has a very specific ratio of flour to water and has a very specific technique about how we knead it and rest it. And the reason the reason why we're going for very soft dough is that this dough is for boiled dumplings and this dough is for pan-fried dumplings. It'll work either way. So I get to show you guys how to make a pot sticker as well. Let's turn this up a little bit. Add a little oil to our pan. My oil is nice and smoky. And we're gonna make some classic fried pork dumplings. A lot of people call these pot stickers. We're good. You guys did a great job. Now, all I want to do with the pot stickers is I just want to cook these until the bottom is nice and browned. Then we're going to hit them with some water. After we're done hitting them with some water, we're going to slap the lid down on there. Slapping the lid down on there allows them to steam, and when the water is cooked away, you're going to wind up with a beautiful dumpling. Which turns us to the subject of dipping sauce. Can anybody tell me what this is? Spoon? Spoon. That is like looking at a child and not seeing possibility. It is a spoon. It is also something that you can use as a utensil in the kitchen without getting into a lot of other fancy crap. And it happens to be the perfect tool to peel ginger. And it allows you to peel your ginger and get into all those little nooks and crannies that surround those knobby little bits. Here on, some of your guests need help down. Oh, okay. Hold on one second, I'll be right there. Here we're gonna, we're good. Check these. When those are brown, hit them with a few tablespoons of water and throw that on. Now, some of you may be having a little bit of trouble making your first dumpling. This is an interactive cooking class. Oh, wow, those are perfect. Which means that I get to go and cook with you. So I'm gonna take my boiled dumplings and leave those right there. And let's see where you guys are. Oh, you're doing great. Do you have your cutter here? All right, so don't freak out. that your cutter is wider than your dough, right?
Right.
Not the biggest deal in the world, right? You can do a couple of things. Boy, you'd love it if everything worked perfectly. You can do a small dumpling, or you can just simply stretch a little bit by pulling on it, because you don't need to redo everything. Or you can do what I think is the easiest thing in the whole world. You can just cut that and just give a little gentle pull just along the way and turn your rectangle into a little bit of a square. And then when you put your dumpling mixture in and you bring one side over the other, even though you have a square, tuck that piece of pork in, you do the same thing, because the ratio of dough to meat is going to stay the same, right? And the dough is so delicious that when you dip it into the dipping sauce, who cares that there's a little bit extra? If you want to get really technical about it and you want to remove those two little pieces that are the difference between a circle and a square, in this case, go ahead and do it. But I would give that dumpling there as nice a grade as any. So it's good.
So we have question number 2.
You guys are jamming this. Do you make pie dough at home?
I'm not much of a baker.
Not much of a baker. I wouldn't know it looking at the skill set that I'm seeing right here. Oh! But it's essentially the same principle. And ravioli is one of the great stuffed dumplings of all time. In fact, if you hand me one of your little circles, one of the great things that you can do is seal these like this, right? And essentially you've made a ravioli. Maybe you need to use a little egg wash, but I just push my fingers around, join these in the middle, and squeeze. I would call that a pretty darn perfect tortellini. Well, it's smaller than tortelloni, bigger than tortellini, so I would just call this a tortelloni-lini. But that's beautiful, right?
Yes.
You guys are rocking. Okay, so when you're crimping, here's what you want to do. Seal this at the top, work it down, half moon, and then to seal it, one end over the other and pinch, 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 one end over the other and pinch. And then you have that beautiful coxcomb with those little nooks, so when it boils, it picks up all of those gorgeous little bits of dipping sauce.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Chef, sorry to interrupt you, but we have our second question for the Facebook Live audience. For a chance to win a private make-along with Andrew, just share your answer with the hashtag KitchenAid Sweepstakes. The question is, if you were making dumplings at home, what filling would you choose? And as a bonus, we have a question for Chef Andrew Zimmern. Kate from Facebook says she joined midstream and wants to ask Andrew if this is the same kind of dough you'd use for pasta.
It can be. The ratio is a little different. This is a dough that makes a lot of Asian pastas. If you used less water and you threw an egg yolk in there and mixed it differently, you could make a beautiful fettuccine from it. Just put a dollop of it in the middle there, and then just center it with your fingers, and then fold one end up and seal it.
Put it on first.
But the idea is then when you're sealing this, you're doing those same little folds. I should have dried my fingers while I was doing it. But you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
Because you're putting on too little, and you're also starting, it broke. You're starting with a skin that I wouldn't use. Go with the thicker one and make it easier on yourself as you're sort of learning. And don't care whether it's a square or a circle. So those are very, very nice dumplings. Here's a big tip for folks. Everyone everyone has eaten dumplings their whole lives, and you're all trying to make them look like you're a Chinese grandmother. Shake that feeling out. You are not Chinese grandmothers, right? So the idea here is that if you're learning how to make dumplings, it's better to learn the technique of stuffing and crimping. So use a big, where are yours? If you have a big sort of square piece that didn't get down to a 4, but it was rolled on a 3, use that, because you're going to learn to fold it and crimp it, and then you can work your way towards thinner doughs and a slightly more elegant presentation. Because at the end of the day, I mean, the great Thomas Keller said, it's about the flavor, right? Yes, it's nice to make food look pretty and you eat with your eyes and everybody says all that kind of stuff, but how many times have we had a dish that was, as the Italians say, deliciosi but brutti, right? Delicious but ugly. There's so much food that falls into that category, and especially with raw ingredients, we get obsessed with the looks of things. A perfect looking tomato that tastes like, oil fluid out of your car, right? I don't care how it looks. I care about the flavor of it, right? So that's the most important thing that you're shooting for, is making sure that you get it sealed so it cooks properly, and that's it. Because the rest of the stuff, the flavor is going to be in there. Then you can make it look pretty as you begin to learn this new technique. This is not easy. And I am watching a lot of people. How many people here have never made Chinese dumplings like this before? Almost all of you. I mean, you're doing amazingly for having never done this before. Especially you. Especially, this gentleman really wants me to let the world know he is the finest novice dumpling maker I have ever seen. So, our pot stickers, the water has evaporated. I love turning these little dumplings on their side because I think you do eat with your eyes, first and foremost. And you can see that seared sort of pot sticker vibe that they have. They're not going to stick together. There's enough oil there. We have our boiled dumplings. We have a really simple dipping sauce that has ginger, a little bit of scallion, chili oil, soy, a couple slices of garlic, right? Does everybody have a glass of champagne or wine? I mean, this is the Aspen Classic after all right? Do you know what we say here at Aspen when we toast each other? Enjoy your food and wine. Enjoy your food and wine. So, one of the things that's nice to do sometimes is get a little fancier with things. Din Tai Fung makes a beautiful truffle dumpling. I think they were the first ones. But let's shave some gorgeous Urbani truffle over these. Some scooted away. Let's put a lot of truffle on that. And then, with those, instead of dipping them, let's eat that like a plated dish. And drizzle some dipping sauce around it. With all of that truffle. And now let's make this, I don't know, let's make it a little more interesting. Add a little garnish to this. I love the brightness of scallion. Well, all the alliums have that delicious, delicious sort of antiseptic quality to them. So we're almost sort of making a little dumpling salad here. And let's put some cilantro around that. So you can serve dumplings that way too. Traditional way, or as Nobu Matsuhisa likes to say about some of his sashimi dishes, new style, right? Let's make them new style. Let's say you have some extra cabbage mixture, the cabbage and mushroom mixture, and you have vegetarian dumplings. Why not use them for a little garnish as well for your boiled dumplings? And scatter some fresh herb around there and make that look nice. Somewhere in this wonderful room is a plate with my name on it. Oh my gosh, I think this is it. So let's see how we did. Not gonna lie, that's pretty good. Now when you eat your dumpling, I want you to pay attention to one thing when you take that first bite. The mouthfeel of the dough. Firm, held together, but soft. I think that's the perfect texture for a boiled dumpling. I don't want them too chewy. There's other types of dumplings that I want to be super, super chewy, but that's not one of them, right? I want nice, soft, pliant dumplings. Do not use this dough to steam with. Do you know why? They'll start to sag and turn goopy. Very good. Hannah's a gastronaut. There you go. Do you like those? It's pretty tasty, right? Now look, you can change your dumpling force meat. You like more ginger, put in more ginger. You want broccoli in your vegetable dumpling, put broccoli in your vegetable dumpling. Start with the basics, see what you like about it, and then move onward from there. You may like a dipping sauce that is just Chinese black vinegar and chili paste. That's one of my favorite ways to do it, right? But you can't do anything, as we talked about at the beginning, until you have that perfect marriage of ingredient and equipment that becomes technique that winds up as food on the plate, right? And I'm not saying this because we have their machinery all around, but is there another dough mixer other than KitchenAid? I wouldn't know because my parents had one and my grandparents had one, and so I have one. And then when they started turning my standing mixer into a pasta roller or a meat grinder, it changed the way I was cooking in my kitchen to have one piece of equipment that did everything. I have one, well, I have my mother's, so I guess that's probably like 60 years old, maybe? Maybe? I don't know, 50 years? I don't know when she bought it. It's that crazy green color that all kitchens were in those days. And it still works, I've never done anything to it. So now you know how to make dumplings, you know how to make doughs, and the world of technique has opened up to you. Sound pretty good? All right.
So our audience is enjoying champagne with their dumplings, but we want to know, this is our third and final question for the Facebook audience. What is your favorite beverage to enjoy while cooking in the kitchen? Share your answer with the hashtag KitchenAid Sweepstakes for a chance to win a private make-along with Andrew. Thank you very much.
I want to see you in Minneapolis. Come cook with me. Wow, those are good. But you see, huh? You can eat so many. Well, they're not that big, which I like. It's a nice sort of one-biter. But in all seriousness, that dough, that mouthfeel is really, really, really special. That recipe creates a really softness in your mouth when you're eating it. It's pretty darn tasty. How many people here are eating the vegetarian ones? You like them? It's good, it's tasty. I sometimes put crushed Szechuan peppercorn. Sometimes I'll put more of the fermented chili bean paste in there that's in the recipe if you want sort of a bigger flavor. The other thing that I do sometimes is I make them just mushroom. Like just pan roast some mushrooms in a saute pan, pulse them in a food processor, and just use that mushroom force meat and just make a mushroom dumpling. Boil those and serve that with roast chicken with, you know, pan gravy from your, whatever your favorite chicken and gravy recipe is. Do this dumpling with just mushrooms inside, or mushrooms and leeks, or mushrooms, potatoes, and leeks. See where I'm going with it? Take that side. That's the kind of thing that you go out to a restaurant and you sit there and go, wow, that chef is really inventive and awesome. But you can do that at home. Super, super simple with this. The other great thing about these dumplings is I put them on a tray. I slide them into my freezer. Half hour later, they'll be frozen. Come back and then bag them. Okay? Do not put them in the bag and then freeze them. They'll just be a clump, right? But when you're making them, I never make 20 dumplings. I make like 200 dumplings, and then I just freeze them in my freezer on cookie sheets, bag them, because you just drop them in boiling water. They'll take an extra minute to cook and float up to the top, and you're golden. I let them float to the top, and then I count to about 100. It really depends on the size of the dumpling, how long they've been in there, the temperature of them when they go in. That little tablespoon of pork is going to cook faster than you think. And with all of the garlic and the ginger and the other stuff in there, you almost could eat it raw. The whole idea of like trichinosis being in our pork is no longer in our pork, for the most part. And you know, good pork, I mean species specific heritage hogs that are now sold everywhere from Whole Foods. Sorry, I meant Amazon. All the way to your farmer's market is, you know, you could eat that medium rare all day long. But yeah, with this batch, they floated and then, what, I counted to 60 in my head, 70 in my head, and then stopped. Questions, comments? Okay, let's talk about that. The greatest tool that you have for learning as a human being is fear, to be honest with you. I'll use a milder version of it, because I don't want you to be afraid in the kitchen, but I do want you to be uncomfortable, okay? If you're a little bit uncomfortable in the kitchen, that's good. Because if you're not uncomfortable, you're not challenging yourself. And the only way to learn something is to be a little bit uncomfortable, and then once you learn it, you're extremely comfortable with it, right? I mean, you do this 2 or 3 times, have some fun at home. It's great to do with friends at a party, little dinner party. Bring forth, you know, you never see one Chinese grandmother making dumplings. It's always 3 of them standing around the dumpling bowl kibitzing. Questions, comments? Easier than you thought. I love that, because when we see things in life, it's about that uncomfortability. We practice contempt prior to investigation, right? We judge a book by its cover. I can't do that. Here's the one I hear the most. Maybe you're familiar with it. There's too many ingredients in that recipe. You prejudge that it takes more time. It may not take more time. That 4-ingredient recipe may take more of your time and attention to do. What's daunting is that it's like, I don't have the knife skills to do that. So practice your knife skills. I don't have the right equipment. Get the right equipment. If you love food, it's an investment that pays off for your loved ones and for yourself forever. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are hobbyist cooks, and you know, they geek out and collect lots of strange equipment, but starting with the basics. I mean, I'm not kidding. The attachment thing that started late 80s, early 90s with KitchenAid. I mean, the grinder, I think, where's a KitchenAid person? The grinder was first, I believe. Then the pasta roller, and it just kind of went on from there. I mean, I think they have an attachment for that drives your car. But seriously, it's just such a fun thing to have in your house and be able to do. And now that you've worked with this dough, you can go on and do all kinds of homemade pastas, all kinds of other wrap foods. That same technique with those sheets, you could make Chinese lasagna. You may not like, I mean, I did this once. But you know how it comes out in sheets? Okay, so you take the different vegetable and pork mixture and layer them between each other, right? And I made a miso sauce and just smeared it instead of ricotta and just baked it and put squares and you drizzle the dipping sauce. It worked pretty darn well, I'm not gonna lie to you. You can also do raviolo, you can do those open-faced lasagnas where you twirl the noodle around the filling and just bake it. I mean, there's some really cool things that you can do with it now that you've gone this far. I'd like to thank everyone at the at Food and Wine Magazine and all the folks here that make the Aspen Classic happen. Bridget Charters and her incredible support team, without whom we are nothing. The great folks at KitchenAid, our folks on Facebook, all of my fans, all of you guys who are awesome. Hannah and Janelle, fantastic assistants. Your mother loved it so much she ran away. She ran away in tears. That's what I do to people. They run away in tears. Thank you very much. It was great to spend the afternoon with you.